All right, now that was on the NC and St. L Railroad, wasn't it? I
Yes,
remember that part because I've
Well,
ridden from Hardin to Paducah.
he was raised in a house right on the side of the railroad, right before you get to Elvie.
It's sad to me to see that railroad torn out, but it's
Well-
gone now, and the north end of it anyway.
Well, and they're in the process of getting rid of it right fast.
All right, so that's where you got your name Morgan, was from your mother's maiden name.
That's right.
Did you know either of your grandparents?
Yes, I knew all of them. They've been living since I was born. They've all died since then.
All right, on your mother's side, that would have been,
Lee Morgan and Mattie Morgan.
all right, and your father's,
Was Terrell Hill and Sadie Hill.
were you kin to the famous Board of Education man Boone Hill?
Very little.
Yeah.
They're all pretty well a different set of hills. There's about 4 sets of hills in Marshall County, and not many of us are related.
Where did you go to elementary school?
I went to Benton,
So you were born right here
Right
in the
here.
county.
about a mile of the courthouse.
So you went to Benton, and you went to high school there.
High school, yes, 12 years in grade school and high school at Benton.
And then you taught there.
Yes,
When did you begin teaching?
1942.
Okay, World War II was
Just
going
beginning,
on, just
yes.
beginning, and you stayed. Did you stay your whole career at that same school?
No, got the high school here at Benton closed, and for agriculture, and we consolidated and carried all the high school students out to Marshall County High School, and I finished up out there. I taught 7 years out at the high school,
So
Marshall County High.
you went 7 years after the new school came into operation. Well, that wasn't very far from where you started, though.
No. I told her
You ever have any regrets at staying in one county all the time? Or?
No, I like to stay at home.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, you got out of elementary school and then you went right into high school, of course. Where did you go to college?
Well, I went 2 years to Murray, and then finished up the last 2 years, University of Kentucky.
Now, back then, in order to get a Smith Hughes certification, you couldn't finish at Murray.
No, you had to go and graduate from and get your
a
that
land
degree
grant college.
from the University of Kentucky, which if you did it in Kentucky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's which area do you like better? That bluegrass is a glamorous region.
You mean of the state of Kentucky, which I like better?
Yeah.
Well, I like West Kentucky.
Okay. Nearly everybody everybody we've asked that has said almost the same thing. All right, did you ever teach anything besides agriculture?
No, that's all I ever taught. Only time I ever taught anything else was maybe when we'd have a teacher that would get sick or something, while I'd fill in with math or something.
All right, how did you see the schools changing in your period of teaching? Did they change very much, or are they just the same as they always were?
Oh no, they've changed up some, right sharply. And the attitude of the students have changed more than anything. The way they operate is different from what it was when I started.
Can you explain that, or tell
No,
us?
I don't understand why it is, but they just don't have the desire, or they don't want to cooperate as well as they did 30, 40 years ago.
Well, I've wondered about those things, and of course, it seems to me that I can see some differences, because you and I are just about the same age. But I've wondered if maybe it was a difference in the attitude of the parents, or home life was different, or what, but it has changed a lot.
Well, I kind of believe that a lot of the changes has come about that recently, students have had more money and more stuff to do with than what they did when used to. There just wasn't any money, and there wasn't much to do with, and about all you could do was work and study and go to school. Now then, they got plenty of other things to do
Yeah, that's right.
and to do with.
And they have the means by which to accomplish those things. All right, do you remember your first teacher, for
Yes,
example?
Miss Georgie Brandon.
And she is still
Living, yes.
I would like to get an interview with her sometime, and maybe I can accomplish
She's a grand
that.
old woman.
Yeah. And still living right here in Benton. I would presume she might be up in her 90s, but I don't.
She'd have to be, yes. Because I thought she was a rather old lady when I went to school. She wasn't, but I thought she was.
It's amazing how one's perspective changes. I know some of the teachers that I thought were just terribly old people turned out were about 5 years older than I.
That's right.
Which I'm sure that's not quite true of her. But I have had them that would get out of college and I was in high school and they would be only 5 years older than I.
Well, yes, I've had students in school that wasn't too much younger than I was.
Margaret Trevathan Pace, for example, was my music teacher.
Yeah.
And I know she and I are not a whole lot difference in age. All right, were you much of a problem to the teachers? Or?
Well, as far as I know, I wasn't a great deal of problem. I wasn't their best student, I don't imagine.
Sometimes I got little paddlings. I'd always laugh out, and Miss Redden, my first teacher, would always paddle me in the hand with a ruler.
My biggest problem was keeping my mouth shut when I was supposed to be quiet.
Well, a lot of us got into situations like that. Okay, you finished at UK. What year was that?
1942.
Well, did you do anything else, or did you go right to teaching?
Went right to teaching.
There was a tremendous demand for teachers in those days.
Well, they were, at that particular year, well, most all the men were in service.
Mm-hmm.
The Army was picking them up.
Yeah.
And as soon as I got my degree, why, you could just find a job anywhere then teaching agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as I got the school started that fall, why, my draft number was up, and I had to leave and go to service.
Oh, you actually did go into service then,
yes.
and so you had a break in your teaching there.
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about that. Where did you train?
Well, I was inducted in Fort Benjamin Harrison in Indiana and went to Camp Crowder, Missouri for basic training. And from there I went to St. Louis, Missouri and took radio teletype training and was shipped to New Guinea.
Well, great. That put you in the Signal Corps.
Yes.
So you kind of in my field there.
Well, I used to be.
You wouldn't want to try to run in Morse code right now.
No, I never could do the code.
What was the South Pacific like? It was terribly hot and wet much of the time, was it?
Well, they have seasons over there just like we have here. Dry season, a wet season, and a cool season, and a hot one. Mm-hmm. And it's hotter than it is here, and it's wetter than it is here in those seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And the country was, in New Guinea when I was there, was, well, it wasn't even good and civilized. I don't know how they lived. They didn't have anything over there to live with or do with.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that land over there, those islands, they come out of the ocean and go straight up, and not much level land. I don't know how they managed to live on it.
I suppose that maybe about the only way they can. They grow just minor amounts of crops and
Little gardens.
Are there wild, let's say, bananas and things of that kind?
Yes, some.
so they
But
can,
it's pretty hard to live off of the country.
yeah.
Nuts, and they have a plant over there they call Tyro that looks sort of like turnips here, and they eat that.
So many of those tropical areas go for root crops, don't they? Of course, I guess we got our yams, sweet potatoes, and so on from not from there, but anyway from a tropical or semi-tropical area. You were overseas about how long?
Part of 4 years.
Did you go by ship?
Yes.
How did the sea trip handle you?
Well,
did you get sick?
No, not going. I got real sick coming home. It was 31 days of going. I was on the first ship that went straight from the States to New Guinea. And it was a big luxury liner with over 5,000 on it, troops on it.
So that didn't roll around as much as...
No, I was lucky enough to have a bunk out on the top deck and fresh air all the time, and I didn't get sick going over. But coming back, I was on one of those Victory ships up in the front hold and sick 3 or 4 days.
Oh, boy. I've heard that is a terrible feeling.
You want to die and can't.
Yeah. All right, so you got home then about what year?
1946.
46, and...
January of 46.
Well, again, did you have a teaching job waiting for you?
Well, no, but I went to visit my sister up at Murray College, and I was walking down the hall, and Dr. Woods caught me and said, I have a job for you. Be there Monday morning. He didn't ask me if I wanted it or was gonna. He just sent me.
That sounds a bit like Dr. Woods.
Yeah, he wouldn't take no. I told him I didn't want a job, and he said, you got this one anyway. You're gonna have to go take this one Monday.
Where was this?
Munfordville, Kentucky. I taught for a fellow for 3 months. Something was wrong, and he wasn't there. And then I came back to Benton and started in the spring.
And finished your whole career in this county.
Yes.
Well, what part of agricultural teaching did you like the best?
Well, growing livestock.
The livestock part.
Yes.
I know my wife was in home ec, and she had those in the old classical Smith Hughes thing. They had 7 areas, and you had to be able to teach all 7 of them. Well, I guess today they graduate with a little narrower viewpoint. Probably they get more out of it, maybe. But
well, you don't farm like you did in 46 and 47 anymore.
Well,
you don't you grow some of the same things, but you do it different, a lot different.
Yeah. That's so livestock. You know, Dr. Woods, I worked in his office 4 years. I liked him very much. He liked agriculture all around, but if he had a favorite, it was Jersey cattle. Do you have a favorite?
Hogs.
Which one of those breeds, Hampshires or?
Well, probably now. Back then, we didn't have Hampshires and Yorkshires. Mainly we had Durocks and Poland China, and back then I preferred the Duroc.
Oh, that is my dad's favorite. He thought there was nothing like a Duroc Jersey. Yeah. All right, now we've gotten you back home. We haven't said anything about your romantic life. You did marry, didn't you?
Yes, but I put it off for a pretty good time. I didn't get married till I was about 28 years old.
Yeah, well. And whom did you marry?
I married Nancy McClure from Water Valley, Kentucky.
Over in Graves County. Yeah. All right, and Nancy worked, at the bank, was it?
Well, yes. She was head bookkeeper at the Bank of Benton for 25 years.
And she's now retired. And,
yes.
I wonder if she's like Harry Sparks said Lois was. Is honey do this and honey do that?
She has a good idea of what she wants and don't mind expressing it.
All right, now, did you have any children?
Have two. Have one daughter that married Mark Cope, and have this named Linda Cope. Have another, Anita Hill, and she's getting married to this coming Saturday week.
All right. Now, I remember your first daughter, very cute little lady and very pleasant. I believe Janie may have had her in school. Where does she live now?
She lives out on Route 2, just close to where I was born.
Do you have any grandchildren?
Two.
Two grandchildren.
Yes, one about 7 and one about 4.
Well, I remember reading Solomon's statement in the Bible about children's children are the joy of old men. Is that true to you?
Well, if you can only have them for a little while at a time.
You wouldn't want to make it
No,
permanent.
not a full-time job.
Well, that reminds me of a statement one of Janie's cousins made. That he married a second time after his first wife died. And he married a lady quite a bit younger than he. And they have 2 boys. And he just said to me when they were at our house recently, I believe the Lord intended for you to have your children when you were young.
Well, if you can just keep these 2 boys one at a time, they're pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But if you put both of them together, well, it makes a lot more problems.
All right. Okay. Tell us what Benton was like when you were growing up around here. How has Benton changed? You remember any of the stores in those days that are gone now? Or?
Oh, yes. Of course, if you start down where the Bank of Benton is now, that used to be a mill run by Barry White and his mother.
A mill?
Yes, a grist mill.
I was
Great
never
big one.
around Benton all that much. You know, Hardin was long distance, I thought, then.
Yes, 7 or 8 miles as long
So-
was.
And we came to Benton on Big Singing Day and Tater Day, and Dad came once a year to pay his taxes.
Well, there's been lots of changes in town since that I can remember. Along where the Carpenter's Hall and those buildings between the National Store and that, they wasn't any there. Of course, when I was in high school, we had a couple of beer joints there in town, and of course, the rest of the way up, Bank of Marshall County was on the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bank of Benton was in the middle of the block.
I remember that clock they had
Yes.
there. It was kind of a landmark for those days.
And, of course, the store right next to the Nelson's Drug Store is always in the middle. And then Boyd Smith used to run a hardware store and a dry goods store right next to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's been several other people in business in some of the other buildings.
Well, that's
there.
interesting to me. I'm glad we got on that because we've had several people tell us about the stores that were there, you know, at the turn of the century. But we haven't had anybody mention what it was like in the
30s?
30s and
Yeah.
maybe the early 40s and so on. What was on the south side? Do you remember along
Well,
there?
most of it in the middle of the block was an old warehouse that Charlie Morgan and Headley Heath kept their old hearses and stuff in.
Mhm.
Just an old metal building.
Mm-hmm.
And
Was
there's only about 3 stores on that, or 4 on that store, on that side of the when I was small. Mr. Jim Brandon ran a grocery store at the east end of the block, and Mr. Peterson ran one on the other end of it. And at one time we had a theater on the end block.
Oh, Shelby ran a theater there when I first remember.
Well, I don't know. He might have run some of it there. Bob Trees Long was running it when I can remember.
Oh. Shelby, I believe, told me he came to Benton in 39.
Well, he's been here a long time.
So, and I believe he came as manager for Roughing Amusement
Yes,
Company.
I think so.
Bob Trees Long. Well, I did not remember that.
Him and his father George was
Mhm.
running one there for a while.
Hmm. Well, on the east side, was there a funeral home in there then?
Hasn't been there then, no. It was just pretty well blank.
Mm-hmm.
But on the back of it, they had a barn where they sold and traded mules.
Now, around on the, not exactly on the square, I guess, but wasn't there a rooming house or a hotel or something along about where the Bank of Marsh County is along in there? Or do I have that wrong?
The rooming house was down on Main Street, across from the Bank of Benton.
Yeah. Okay. And I suppose the Methodist Church has been there a long
It's been
time.
there all the time. Yes. In fact, we at one time went to school in the Methodist Church when they were building the school at Benton when I was.
First time I can personally remember, and I don't know what year it was, probably much later than this, but there was didn't Joe Darnell have a service station along
Yes, right on the corner.
Yeah, of Main and what is that street?
11th.
11th
11th
Street.
and Main.
Okay. What about the taxes and so on? Were they pretty high back in those days?
No, taxes wasn't high, but for what you had to pay the taxes with, it was probably higher than it is now.
Yeah.
Seemed higher, would be higher.
Yeah. Who were some of the government officials around the county that you can remember in those? Say a sheriff or a clerk or
Oh well, Bernard Holland, who at one time was sheriff, and
our
Lewis,
famous sports fan.
yes,
Yeah.
and Lewis Lilly, and
Did he make an oil distributor later?
he was
Maybe
beforehand.
he was then. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
And Dolly Mars, or not Dolly Mars, but Sam Mars' daddy. I can't think of his name. Walker Mars. Yes,
Walker
he was
Mars.
sheriff. In fact, he was sheriff. Brought me out my papers to go to the army.
Yeah. Greetings from
Greetings,
Uncle
yes.
Sam.
And he came back to see me because I didn't show up for the bus. I'd gone and volunteered the day before for the Signal Corps.
Mm-hmm. Well, when I saw I was about to be drafted, I quickly joined the U.S. Navy.
Well, I did. I joined the Signal Corps, and
Yeah.
he wondered why I wasn't at the bus.
All right. Do you remember anything about, say, your first train ride?
Well, no, I don't know if it was the first one or not. We rode the train several times to Paducah. That's about as far as I ever went on this local train here.
Mm-hmm. Occasionally, I got myself caught when I was in college, and I'd ride between Murray and Hardin. There was a train that went up in the morning in time for early classes and came back at night at 9 p.m. Now, that's pretty late,
Mm-hmm.
but if you couldn't do anything else, you could always take 15 cents
Yeah.
and ride from Murray to Hardin on the train. Have the car in the shop or something of that kind. All right. What do you think has changed the most in the field of communication since you were growing up?
Well, of course, television. It used to be that radio wasn't very many stations that you could get, and of course those old battery radios, if you didn't have electricity, were hard to keep charged up.
Now, we used to, and I know a number of our neighbors in the 30s would have we'd buy a new battery for Christmas, and we'd listen to the big programs along in the winter. When the battery wore out, summertime, we were working too hard to listen to the radio anyway much, so a lot of times we'd let the radio go for 3 or 4 months without a battery. Maybe maybe everybody wasn't that poor, but
Well, we didn't have electricity in a mile of town here until about in the 40s, early 40s.
mm-hmm.
And, well, we didn't have radios and lights up till then either. Had a battery radio, but it didn't last good. It just didn't work good.
The REA bill passed in 1938, I recall, and I think the first lines were energized anywhere. That'd be true all over America in 1939. So in 39, a few places began to get current, but at the old farm of ours out west of Hardin, we didn't get power on that little line till 1947.
I believe that they got power at where I was born in 42, and that they got it from the Benton system.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they just had a couple of little dynamos down there on North Main Street, and it didn't have a lot of electricity.
Well, you know, that half hour has sort of zipped along pretty fast. We only have about a minute and a half left. Do you have some kind of a closing statement you'd like to make, something you'd like to put on before we get off?
No, not that I know of. I've enjoyed it.
Well, I'm glad to have the chance to interview you. You're noted around town now, I guess, when it rains, as being the best grower of corn. What kind of variety do you utilize there?
Well, for sweet corn, I plant Illinois Super Sweet.
Mm-hmm. Illinois Super Sweet. Well, I'll try to keep that in mind. I ran upon an ear of that one time. It was mighty good.
It's not bad corn.
Well, thank you very much. We've been listening to Morgan Hill, retired school person, agricultural authority, and as we learned, a soldier in World War II and many, many other things, father and now grandfather, husband, and so on. It's been a pleasure to have him. This is Ray Mofield speaking for WCBL Radio.